Hello everyone, and welcome to my CBS YNR Full Today channel. Please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The Newman family has faced more than its share of frightening moments on the young and the restless, but nothing could prepare Victor, Nikki, and the rest of the family for a hospital crisis that appears to push everyone to the breaking point. Nick Newman has always been one of the strongest members of the Newman family.
He'd probably be even quicker to buy you a beer.
Survived dangerous enemies, painful betrayals, business wars, personal losses, and moments when his own choices nearly destroyed everything around him. Yet this time, the situation feels completely different because Nick is not fighting back, arguing, making a difficult decision, or trying to protect someone he loves. He is lying motionless in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines and doctors, while the people closest to him desperately wait for any indication that he might wake up. The uncertainty alone becomes almost unbearable, especially for Nikki Newman, who cannot simply accept the possibility that her son may not return to the life he once knew. The emotional tension rises when the latest medical update suggests that Nick's condition has taken a devastating turn, leaving Victor struggling to maintain the control he usually demands in every crisis. For a man like Victor, who has spent decades believing that determination can overcome almost anything, being forced to stand helplessly beside his unconscious son creates a completely different kind of fear. He can fight business rivals, expose enemies, and manipulate circumstances to protect his family, but he cannot order Nick to open his eyes. He cannot threaten fate into changing. He cannot make the doctors promise that everything will be fine. That helplessness could become the most painful part of this entire Newman family crisis.
Well, Vic, we can take care of ourselves and each other, so we're ready to take care of Mom when she gets out of surgery.
Years watching her children face danger, but there is something uniquely terrifying about seeing Nick completely unresponsive. Every second that passes without movement seems to make the room feel colder. Every quiet word from the medical team seems to carry enormous weight. Nikki desperately wants someone to tell her that Nick is going to wake up, yet the doctors cannot offer the certainty she needs. Instead, they explain that his condition remains serious and that the next stage of his recovery may be unpredictable. For Nikki, those words are almost impossible to process. She begins asking questions, trying to understand what the doctors are saying, but the emotional pressure becomes too much. The possibility that Nick could remain unconscious for an extended period begins to sink in, and Nikki's strength finally appears to disappear. This is where the story could take an especially dramatic turn, with Nikki becoming overwhelmed and collapsing after hearing the latest hospital update. Whether that collapse happens from exhaustion, emotional shock, or sheer panic, the moment would send another wave of fear through the Newman family because suddenly there are two people in danger of breaking down instead of one. Victor would immediately have to confront the reality that Nikki is not simply upset. She is emotionally devastated by what she believes could happen to their son. The Newman patriarch could find himself forced into a role he rarely embraces, comforting the woman he loves while hiding his own fear. He might tell Nikki that Nick is a fighter and that they cannot give up, but behind those reassuring words would be a man confronting the same terrifying question: what if Nick does not wake up? That question could haunt every conversation at the hospital. Victoria could arrive and immediately realize that something is seriously wrong. Adam could struggle with his own emotions, particularly because his complicated relationship with Nick has never prevented him from caring deeply about his brother when a real crisis emerges. Even Summer, Kyle, or other members of the extended family could be affected by the uncertainty, because Nick is not simply another resident of Genoa City. He is one of the central figures whose presence connects generations of the Newman family. His absence would create an enormous emotional vacuum. And while everyone waits for signs of improvement, old conflicts suddenly become meaningless. Business disputes, family arguments, accusations, and grudges that seemed important yesterday could feel completely insignificant compared with the possibility of losing Nick. That contrast could give the storyline its strongest emotional power. The people who spent so much time fighting may suddenly realize how quickly life can change. Victor could remember every argument he ever had with Nick and wonder whether he should have said something different. Nikki could replay conversations with her son in her mind, focusing on moments she wishes she could experience again. Even Adam could wonder whether he should have made peace with Nick sooner instead of allowing old Newman family tensions to continue. This kind of emotional reflection would make the hospital storyline more than a simple medical cliffhanger. It would become a test of the entire Newman family. Nick's condition could force everyone to reconsider what truly matters when there is no guarantee of tomorrow. At the center of the crisis, however, would remain the question of whether Nick is actually slipping into a coma or whether doctors are still trying to determine the extent of his condition. In a soap opera as unpredictable as The Young and the Restless, a character remaining unconscious can open the door to numerous possibilities. The hospital staff might initially describe Nick as unresponsive, but later explain that his brain is still showing signs of activity. That small detail could give the family a thread of hope. Nikki would hold on to that hope with everything she has. She could sit beside Nick's bed, take his hand, and talk to him even though he cannot respond. She might remind him of childhood memories, family celebrations, difficult times they survived together, and the moments when he refused to give up. Nikki could believe that somewhere inside, Nick can hear her. Her emotional determination could become one of the most moving parts of the storyline. Instead of simply crying beside the bed, she could begin speaking to Nick as though he were awake, telling him that his family needs him and that he still has unfinished business in Genoa City. Those words could carry enormous emotional weight because Nick has always been portrayed as someone with strong ties to his family. If anyone can reach him emotionally, Nikki might believe it is her. Victor could take a different approach. Rather than openly discussing his fear, he might focus on practical matters, demanding additional consultations and refusing to accept a pessimistic prognosis. He could push the doctors for answers while privately struggling with the possibility that money, influence, and power cannot solve this particular problem. That could lead to an unusual emotional vulnerability for Victor. The man who normally controls the room might suddenly have no control at all. He could stand outside Nick's hospital room and admit to Nikki that he is afraid. Such a confession would be significant because Victor rarely allows himself to appear powerless. Yet Nick's condition could strip away that armor. The possibility of losing his son could remind Victor that beneath the powerful businessman and intimidating patriarch is a father who simply wants his child to survive. Nikki might need that honesty more than anything. If Victor finally admits that he is terrified, she may realize she is not carrying this burden alone. Their shared fear could bring them closer even as the crisis threatens to tear the family apart. Meanwhile, the rest of Genoa City would inevitably begin reacting to the news. Friends and rivals alike could hear that Nick is unconscious, creating emotional responses across the canvas. Some characters might genuinely fear for him, while others could see an opportunity in the chaos. That is where the story could become even more dangerous. Whenever a major Newman crisis occurs, there are usually people watching from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to make their move. If Nick remains hospitalized and Victor and Nikki are distracted, someone could attempt to exploit the Newman family's vulnerability. Business enemies could make aggressive moves. Old rivals could resurface. Family secrets could suddenly become dangerous. Nick's absence could create a power vacuum that someone is determined to fill. This possibility would add suspense without taking away from the emotional core of the hospital storyline. Victor may have to divide his attention between protecting Nick's future and protecting the family's business interests. Nikki, however, might refuse to leave her son's side. Her priorities could become very clear. Nothing matters more than Nick waking up. Even if Victor insists that he needs to handle outside threats, Nikki could tell him that their son needs them both. That emotional disagreement could create another layer of tension between the longtime couple.
The Restless.
They may share the same fear but respond to it differently. Victor wants action. Nikki wants presence. Victor searches for solutions. Nikki searches for a connection with Nick. Neither approach is necessarily wrong, but the difference could expose how deeply shaken they both are. The most heartbreaking moment could come when Nikki believes she has heard something from Nick. Perhaps his hand moves slightly, His breathing changes, or a monitor shows a subtle response while she is speaking to him. Doctors might initially caution her not to read too much into it, but Nikki could insist that something happened. Victor might be skeptical at first, only to witness a similar response himself. Suddenly, the family has a reason to hope. But in a soap opera, hope rarely comes without another complication. The doctors could explain that a response does not necessarily mean Nick is about to wake up. They may need more time to determine whether his condition is improving. That would keep viewers emotionally invested while allowing the storyline to develop naturally. Nikki would refuse to give up. She might return to Nick's bedside every day, speaking to him and reminding him that his family is waiting.
Make sure that Matt is gone.
Victor could continue searching for every possible medical opinion while privately preparing himself for the worst. Their determination would show that even when the Newman family is divided, Nick remains one of the people capable of bringing everyone together. The crisis could also change the way Nick's siblings interact with one another. Victoria and Adam might disagree about how to handle certain family decisions, but when it comes to Nick, their differences could temporarily disappear. They might stand together outside his room, each silently processing what his absence means. For Adam especially, the situation could trigger complicated emotions. Nick has been both brother and rival, but losing him would be entirely different from competing with him. Adam could realize that some battles are simply not worth continuing. That realization could eventually lead to a powerful moment between him and Nikki, where she asks him to put family first. Adam may not have all the answers, but he could promise that he will be there for Nick. Such scenes would give the storyline emotional depth beyond the hospital setting. The possibility that Nick may never wake up would remain the terrifying shadow over every conversation, but the show could use that fear to explore forgiveness, family loyalty, and the consequences of taking people for granted. Nikki's collapse would then become symbolic of more than shock. It could represent the moment when a mother who has survived countless Newman family disasters finally reaches the limit of what she can emotionally endure. Seeing Nick motionless could make Nikki confront every fear she has tried to bury. She may realize that no amount of wealth or family power can guarantee the safety of the people she loves. And that realization could change her permanently. If Nick eventually wakes, the experience could create an entirely new chapter for him and his family, with every small movement becoming a major event. That would allow the young and the restless to build suspense gradually rather than resolving everything in a single episode. For viewers, the biggest question would remain painfully simple: will Nick open his eyes? Nikki would desperately want a yes. Victor would demand one. His siblings would pray for one. But until Nick regains consciousness, nobody can know what the future holds. That uncertainty is exactly what could make this storyline so emotionally powerful. In my view, the strongest direction would not be to treat Nick's condition as a quick shock designed only to frighten the audience. Instead, the story should use the crisis to examine the Newman family's relationships and show what happens when their usual power struggles suddenly become irrelevant. Nick's possible coma could force Victor and Nikki to confront their deepest fears, while giving Victoria, Adam, and the rest of the family an opportunity to put old grudges aside. It could also create a major turning point for Nick if he survives and eventually wakes. Imagine him opening his eyes after everyone has spent days believing he might never respond. Imagine Nikki being the first person he sees. Imagine Victor standing nearby, unable to hide his relief. That kind of moment could become one of the most emotional Newman family scenes in a long time. Yet until that happens, the danger remains. Nick is still unconscious, Nikki has already reached an emotional breaking point, and Victor is facing a situation he cannot simply control. The Newman family has been shaken to its foundation, and the next medical update could change everything. Will Nick finally show a meaningful sign of consciousness, or will the doctors deliver even more difficult news? Could Nikki's emotional collapse force Victor to realize just how fragile his family has become? And if Nick does wake up, will he remember what happened and emerge from this crisis determined to change his life? The answers could lead to a major new chapter in Genoa City, because sometimes the greatest turning points happen when a family is pushed to the edge. For now, one thing is certain, everyone is waiting for Nick to wake up, Nikki is refusing to lose hope, and Victor is preparing for whatever comes next. The Newman family may be facing one of its darkest moments, but as long as Nick continues to fight, there is still a reason to believe that this story is not over. And if that first sign of consciousness finally comes, it may arrive at the exact moment when everyone has almost stopped believing it is possible. The waiting becomes even more difficult as the Newman family settles into an uncomfortable routine at the hospital, where every sound from Nick's room seems capable of changing the emotional atmosphere in an instant. Nikki refuses to leave for long, convinced that Nick needs to know his mother is there even if he cannot open his eyes. She talks to him quietly, reminding him of the years they have shared and telling him that everyone is still fighting for him. Victor watches from a distance, trying to remain strong, but even he cannot hide how deeply the situation is affecting him. For once, the Newman patriarch has no business strategy, no carefully constructed plan, and no enemy he can intimidate into submission. His only concern is his son. The doctors continue monitoring Nick closely, explaining that unconscious patients can sometimes show unexpected changes, but they also warn the family not to assume that every movement or fluctuation means a recovery is beginning. Those words create an agonizing balance between hope and fear. Nikki desperately wants to believe every positive sign is meaningful, while Victor tries to prepare himself for every possible outcome. That difference in how they handle the crisis could create emotional tension between them, even though both are fighting for exactly the same thing. Then comes a moment that leaves Nikki convinced something has changed. While she is speaking to Nick, she notices what appears to be a slight movement. At first, she wonders if she imagined it because she has been sitting beside him for so long. She calls for Victor, and suddenly the room becomes filled with nervous anticipation. The medical team checks Nick's condition and carefully examines the monitors. They do not immediately declare that Nick is waking up, but they acknowledge that the response deserves attention. For Nikki, that tiny possibility is enough to restore a measure of hope. She grips Nick's hand and tells him that he has to keep fighting. Victor stands beside her, silently watching his son's face, perhaps afraid to become too hopeful too quickly. The Newman family has learned through years of crises that good news can sometimes be followed by another devastating turn, so nobody dares celebrate yet. Outside the room, the situation begins affecting everyone differently. Victoria struggles to accept how quickly her family's world has changed. She has spent much of her life dealing with her father's intense expectations and the complicated relationships among the Newman siblings, but Nick's condition makes those conflicts feel insignificant. She begins thinking about the last time she spoke with her brother and wonders whether there was something she should have said differently. Adam experiences a similar emotional conflict. His relationship with Nick has always been complicated, filled with competition, resentment, and moments of unexpected loyalty. Yet now Adam cannot simply think of Nick as a rival. He is his brother, and the possibility of losing him forces Adam to confront feelings he might normally keep buried. He may not express those emotions openly, but his presence at the hospital could reveal more than words ever could. That is why the next move matters more than the first punch. Billy may have demanded, "Give me back Chancellor," but getting it back could require far more than anger. It could require patience. It could require strategy. And most importantly, it could require Billy to finally control the one thing Kane may be counting on him to lose, his temper. The battle is far from over, and if these accusations lead to an even bigger corporate revelation, the Chancellor War could become one of the most explosive conflicts in Genoa City. The evidence may expose a hidden deal, force unexpected alliances, or completely change how everyone views Kane's role in the company. And if another player has been manipulating events from the shadows, Billy and Kane may soon discover that they have been fighting the wrong battle all along. For now, Billy has made his position unmistakably clear. He wants Chancellor back, he believes he has evidence to support his case, and he is no longer willing to quietly accept the situation. Kane, however, has every reason to fight back. That means the next confrontation could be even more consequential than the first. And this time, Billy may